All right, good morning, everyone. We'll call to order the Criminal Justice, Public Safety, and Emergency Services Committee meeting for February 27th, 2025. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. I have motion by Supervisor Conover. Second, Supervisor Gilligan. Thank you. Any discussion or question on those? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Privilege of the floor, anything from the committee members or other supervisors, member of the public? Seeing none, we'll move to the first department, which is our assigned counsel. We've got our administrator with us this morning. Ryan, welcome. You'll find that this morning's assigned counsel agenda and the public defender is almost identical for the amounts. So this is a reference to grant awards. I'd like to take 1, 2, and 3 without objection together. These are grants from the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services. So Brian, if you want to give us just a thumbnail sketch of 1, 2, and 3 together.
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor. So 1, 2, and 3 involve 2 separate grants that both my office and the Public Defender's Office received from the Division of Criminal Justice Services. Those grants were apportioned between our offices based upon the number of cases each office handles. So of those 2 grants, they were each $190,000. So of that $380,000, about $100,000 of it is going to the assigned counsel office, the rest going to the Public Defender's Office. So of the 2 grants, one has to be utilized for discovery reform, and the other is just for supplemental any assistance with providing assigned counsel services. So the one relating to discovery reform, we'd like to take the opportunity to use that money to replace our data management system. The current system that we use is called Laserfiche. It has drastically increased its cost over the last 2 years by about 60% to over $11,000 a year. This new system that we're seeking to replace it with would only cost about $1,800 a year. So when we chose the Laserfiche system, it is a sort of a different tool than what I think we really need. And I think the legal server program that we want to use is much better suited to do what we are seeking for it to do. So obviously being in a data management realm, it is appropriate for the discovery reform grant money. The rest of the money we're seeking to provide, cover the costs of vouchers. A lot of the state grants that we get cover a lot of things, but vouchers generally isn't one of them. So this grant is an opportunity to take that money and apply it to the approximately $1.1 million the county spends on vouchers. So we're taking that money and applying it to that. So that's
Okay.
2 and 3.
And I didn't see any match requirements from the county on these.
No, not at all.
Okay, good. All right. Motion to move items 1, 2, and 3. Supervisor Strainer first. Second, Driscoll, question? Supervisor
do.
Strainer.
Larry, you read these contracts. They were a little confusing.
They are.
I mean, a lot of trees lost their lives for these contracts. So we're good with that. That's been vetted.
Not necessarily. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
That are still I'm unclear of.
Because it was confusing.
Other questions from the committee first? The county attorney?
There's 2 resolution requests in the packet. At the end of your packet, and there is one legal fees and transcripts for $50,562. So, which would be for one of the 2 grants, correct?
Correct.
And then right before that, there's another resolution request, which refers to subscriptions, contract, and education, but it's only for $47,407. I'm not sure if there's another line that we need to add or want to add in there for the difference between, for the second grant, for that 50,000 to the 47. That's my first.
So we had some time limitations on spending this money. So I tried to spend as much of it as I could, I guess is how I could put it. The difference there, so it has to be related to discovery reform. So the education, the subscription fees, and the legal server contract Legal server actually came in a little bit less than we thought it was going to, so when we had this chunk of money, our side of it, when I say that, obviously the public defender's office is paying for one half of it, we're paying for the other portion of it. Our portion came in a little bit less than we expected, so that's why there's that difference. There's limitations on what we can spend this money for, so, and time limitations and how to spend it, so that's why it's less than the total grant award.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And Chairman, if I may, really, all 5 requests are all part of the same purpose. All 5 resolution requests on your agenda are to apply the grant funding.
But there are 2 separate grants, but yes.
So my concerns that I identified this morning, was when I was going through the contract proposal with the Site and Council program, and then also, it's almost mirror with the Public Defender's Office, other than the terms are, the costs are different, is that the cost for the system for assigned council is $42,400. And then there are subscription fees after that.
Yeah, so they're maintenance fees in terms of maintaining the computer program, providing customer service. If there's difficulties with the program, we'll have contacts at Legal Server we can contact to discuss fixing. The system is a cloud-based system that requires maintenance. So that subscription fee is going to be an annual cost. But right now, we're paying $11,000 annually to our current data management system, and replacing it with this system is only going to be $1,800 a year for that subscription costs.
I understand, but just so the committee understands, and I understand it's also grant money, but it's $42,000 for a 2-year term for the program that's going to be installed. And I'm not clear on the contract that the county owns that intellectual property. So this contract and the contract with the PD's department has an upfront cost. And for your department, it's $42,400 for the installation. And then there's 2 additional subscription fees. There's a monthly subscription fee of $150 for your department, plus a one-time fee of $1,350.
That $1,350 is for the 2025 year. So it's not, that's essentially the monthly fee for 2025. That's not an additional monthly fee. That's covering the monthly fees from March until, or April, or whenever we get the system up and running till the end of the year. That's not an additional subscription fee.
So they discounted the subscription.
Correct. We're not using it currently.
Beautiful. Okay, well, that answers the
That's
question.
the prorated subscription for 2025.
So there is no monthly fee of $150. There's a one-time annual fee of $1,350 after you pay the initial installation cost of $42,000.
I'm not certain if it's going to be billed monthly or annually, but it's $150 a month.
That helps out a lot. And it would have been the same question on the public defenders. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, so, okay, our treasurer, go ahead.
So I think so you're only got 9 months in 2025, so in 2026, which this contract runs through, it'll be $1,800, and 2026 will be the 150 times 12 versus the 150 times 9.
Correct. But the system we're currently using would have been over $11,000.
Got it. But it's not a one-time charge, it's the monthly subscription.
Okay, that clarifies it. Thank you. Anything else from the committee? All right, so we broached over into items 4 and 5 as well. I think that's been fairly detailed explanation of that. So I would ask our folks who made the motion. and
Sure.
Second, would you then agree to amend it to 1 through 5? Okay, we have agreement.
And we can make 4 and 5 a single resolution. They don't need to be separated into 2 separate resolutions. It's one contract.
Let's batch 4 and 5.
All right. Any additional questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Brian, anything else for us?
No, thank you.
Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. All right, next is the public defender, and other than the amounts, we've already heard the background, so we've got our public defender with us. Do you want to add anything additionally, in reference to how you're using the funds?
No, not at all.
All right, I think it's been fairly well explained and questions as well. So let me get a motion to move items 1 through 5. Supervisor Strainer, second Supervisor Gilligan. Questions, discussion?
Well, just to clarify, there's no issues on, the requests 4 and 5. We can merge them again into one resolution, that would be helpful. But just so the committee's aware that the, one of the grant funding is being used to increase salaries. On page 3, it refers to stipends, but it's not a stipend. It is increase of the staff of salaries in the public defender office.
Any issues?
Larry, don't we need a request to amend the table of organization then to increase salaries? You can't just,
I don't know the answer to that.
yeah, when you increase salaries, you have to amend the table of organization and salary schedule, so we need an additional resolution.
Just go ahead, Supervisor
Well, I
Strainer.
had one question too. Can you use that grant money for the salaries?
Yes,
Because I remember we had that discussion, I think, last month.
yes, we studied that in conjunction with the Treasury and legal department. And everybody was on board. In fact, the legal department is who suggested that that would be the best way to allocate these funds would be through salary increases. It's basically just mirroring what the district attorney's office did with the same grant money.
Supervisor Patrick.
Does this affect all salaries moving forward year to year, or is it this strictly a 1-year thing based on the grant that award that we're seeing?
No, if you amend the table of organization and salary schedule, it follows through, so it's permanent.
So that,
That's true, and it's a good question, and that's something that the board actually posed to the district attorney's office as well. And I talked to the DA and asked them about the sustainability of this. And it's understood that, you know, we're gonna have to circle back if this funding were not to be, we've been told, not promised, but told that there's a very, very strong chance that this will be a reoccurring grant. However, if it wasn't reoccurring, what would happen to these salary increases? That's an issue that we would have to circle back and revisit. There through trying to find other income sources or salary reductions or elimination of positions, but all options would be on the table at that point.
Other questions? Tammy?
I'm sorry.
Clarification?
On behalf of the county administrator, so we will need just the resolution request to amend the salaries. There's a resolution request form to amend the salaries if this is approved. And on behalf of the county administrator, the public defender's office did meet with the county administrator. He wanted to relay that he had no opposition if the committee wanted to go forward with this, with the stipulation that this should be no county dollars today or in the future. So to that point is, if this is approved, that grant funding will need to be found to cover anything in the future, should this not be approved.
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent point. This grant funding not only covers the salary increases, but also covers all legacy costs associated. So that this is all state funded funds.
And it also uncovers fringe. I did notice that the fringe, because that was a question, the associated fringe with the salary.
And if the funding isn't made available in the following years, then that's something we'll all have to address, including the district attorney's office. Because their salary increases amongst their assistants was also came directly from the same grant. And so it suffers the same vulnerability. So we're all gonna have to circle back if that funding dries up, because it is perfectly understood that as it stands now, we're not seeking any county funding for this.
Other question from the committee? Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. If you receive a grant to pay for a position, you could say if we don't get the grant, the position goes away. This is different. I think this, to me, it's different because we need to attract attorneys. We need to be able to bring people in to do this work. And we're having a difficult time competing. This grant allows us to compete a little better for attorneys. And but if the grant should go away, we still have to engage the issue of how what salary helps us sustain these departments to get to funding. Well, we all know because the conversations we've had maybe in the past that these attorneys can make a lot more money working privately and being reimbursed by the state of New York. So I think that I wouldn't want it to be understood that you know, if the grant goes away, then therefore the funding goes away, because really what we're doing is we're adjusting, I think, the grade get to that. I assume that's what we're doing. We're adjusting the grade to get to that dollar amount within the salary structure.
If I can just jump in, I don't believe that's true.
That's not what we're doing.
I think we're just fixing numbers at this point for the attorneys that work for the county, because there is the schedule that was created under the prior county administrator has not been in effect for a couple of cycles,
Okay, I see.
because it didn't account for
Well, that's actually helpful.
the current schedule.
And I think that's actually helpful. If we're not using that, if we're not, you know.
Anything else from the committee? Okay, so previously Supervisor Patrick.
Just have a question that, so am I to understand that we're not competitive for these positions in the public defender's office as it is salary wise?
I don't think you can, I don't think that there's a bigger question across the entire county of whether we're competitive for attorneys throughout Warren County, not just the public defender's office. But the piece that over and above compensation is the piece of public service and what the value of that is and what the value of experience is. So there's a lot more factors than just a dollar amount that goes into an individual's decision to work in the public interest.
Okay.
But I would defer to the public defender, who I'm sure can be more specific about the number of vacancies he sees in his office and the difficulties I assume he's been experiencing in filling those, and that additional salary would at least assist in one of those factors that would draw individuals to serve in the public interest in the public defender's office, as well as all of the attorney departments throughout Warren County.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that, well, one, Mr. Teflon said at the last county meeting that we do not have a retention problem here at the county. Two, I think that Mr. Conover makes a really good point that we want to attract the best and be competitive in the market. But I just know that dealing with the town's budget the last, I don't know, 6 years, that when you give a raise, those numbers don't go down. That's just kind of the way it works. They stay where they are, and we continue to pay no matter what it takes. But if we think that it's in the best interest of the county, I have no objection. I'm just trying to give a realistic viewpoint of how it actually happens, and at least from what I understand.
Well, those are excellent comments from both of you gentlemen. And of course, if this funding were to disappear, I'm not saying we wouldn't be back here addressing the very issues that you touched on and seeking to sustain the pay increases. That's now off the table, nor is it off the table that positions would have to be eliminated. Everything would be on the table. And that's an issue that we would address. However, I do want to point, and it's an excellent point you raise about how are our salaries competitive with the surrounding counties, and also one of the really important aspects of this grant was specifically mentioned was retention. And I'm gonna ask my first assistant to just comment on some of the experiences that we've had in the past year relative to retention. Attorney Coleman, could you please address that?
Thank you. So with regard to Administrator Kaplan's commentary about retention of attorneys in the county last month, while he is absolutely correct that the district attorney's office from the 3 years that I've been here, I haven't seen any turnover in their office. However, since Greg took over the public defender position in 2022, we have had an average of 54.55% retention rate. That means we're losing almost half of our attorneys every year. If we take that from 2022 to present, the first 2 attorneys that I saw leave our office specifically left our office when the assigned counsel rate more than doubled. It went from $70 to $158 an hour. And 2 people said, see you later. Because they were making a quarter of that, if that much. And of course, there are benefits they receive here, but it was just too much of a disparity. Then we had more attorneys leave and who freely admitted, I'm happy here, I'm sorry. It's just that, this office is going to pay me $130,000 and I cannot, continue to make 85 when I have that on the table, nor will my wife allow me to do that. So it has been repeatedly an issue of simply money. And while I did my best to do research concerning surrounding counties, public defender salary rates, I do find that ours could increase, and this is not a huge increase that we're making, but I do think that this helps to make us a bit more competitive. What I'm looking for is stability in this department, because we cannot keep the department from people jumping ship if we're losing people at this rate. We end up with people joining at the bottom level, we're training them. And after a year and a half, they're leaving for a job now that they have a little bit of experience that pays substantially more money. And what we're missing is those mid-level attorneys that have experience, that can handle cases and large caseloads on their own without substantial supervision from myself or Attorney Canali. So the idea is that we need to start shoring up, this department and keeping it stable so that we can get to a point where the district attorney's office is, where they're not losing anyone. And that is my goal here.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, and thank you for the comments. This issue is a double-edged sword. When we lose individuals, now we have to recruit them. So, and you have the same situation. Can you recruit people with the necessary experience to come in at whatever the salary is? So,
well,
both are issues that go hand in hand.
Indeed. And because we've been losing people so quickly, I've had to spend an enormous amount of time on recruiting, interviewing, and vetting new candidates. And what I've seen is that the vast majority are all brand new attorneys in New York State. So they would have no experience other than an internship or a clinic during law school or something of that nature. And so we do have the ability to lower the salary rates within the structure of a vacated position. If it was vacated by someone who had 3 years experience and was receiving a rate that, had been increased by COLA or whatever it might have been through those 3 years, we can drop down to what we have as a baseline starting rate, which currently is 84,000.
Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, I think that makes really underscores the point that I think that some of us are making here, that, do the math on $158 an hour. Do the math on that times, say, 2,000 hours. Full-time, 2,100 hours, the private sector would be more than that, but we'll say 2,100 hours, do the math on that. It's a big, big, big number, and so these attorneys are really, are valuable for lots of reasons. And they're very dedicated, they do great work for taxpayers of the county, and frankly, it's a lot less costly, and we've had presentations of how they're having to go out actually to the law school to recruit young attorneys to come in to public service, because of the competition that's out there for attorneys, and so I think the point being made that I think that we're going to be faced with this years to come. I don't want anybody to think that, we're going to roll something back here. I don't think that's what it is.
County Attorney.
If I could just clarify, and since we have assigned counsel here, I would be shocked if there are attorneys on the assigned counsel panel who are billing 2,000 hours a year at that rate. And I don't know how many attorneys there are on the panel, but my historical understanding is the assigned counsel panel supplemented attorneys' income. It wasn't their sole source. Now, that may have changed over and through the years. But the larger your assigned counsel panel can be, which I thought was part of the reason for that increase in doubling of the rate, that you're spreading out that among many attorneys, and you don't have a small handful that are getting 2,000 hours submitted on an annual basis, because that would be a fairly large number in this area, at least. So I just wanted to kind of make sure there was no misunderstanding on that. But clearly, whatever the calculations were for any attorney that's in public service, right? You take the wage, your benefits, the value of public service, what you're learning, your work environment, and you balance that against a private sector job. Right? And it's not a dollar for dollar trade-off in those two, having worked in public service and worked in private law firms for a number of years. And the formula is different for every individual where they place their value on those different factors. But I just primarily wanted to focus on, yes, that the doubling of the rate, I think, had ripple effects throughout New York State, the counties and attorneys. But we shouldn't really look at the scale as, 1,500 hours or 2,000 hours a year billed at that rate through the assigned counsel program. But again, the assigned counsel administrator is more familiar with our numbers than I don't have any familiarity with those numbers. So.
I just have one more thing. I agree with everything that Mr. Elman and Mr. Conover just said, but I will just add that I can tell you from my own experience being in, and this is true across the board, a lot of our employees, they compare themselves to the private sector and the dollar amount that you can make per hour. But, when you're in private practice and, I've been running my own LLC for quite some time now, it's a lot to manage. You're in charge of the business, you're scheduling the jobs, you have some downtime, and there's just a lot of headaches that come along with trying to do your own thing and providing your own health insurance and all these types of things. It's a complicated equation, but I do think we want to pay people a rate where we can retain people and attract the best for the county, and we appreciate the hard work that they do. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that it's very difficult to be in your own private practice and to run that type of a setup. And I assume it's very difficult to do what you do also.
So I couldn't agree more. Down around the head, and that's something we try to tell lawyers who they hear the 158 an hour. I've been a private practitioner for 33 years, and I tell them the same thing you just said. It's not wonderful $158 an hour. And to Larry's point, you're not just going to work 40 hours a week, multiply that by $1.58, and that's not going to happen that way. However, the 158 an hour is a very seductive number to a young lawyer, especially when they do their calculations, what they're paid here. And it comes out to something like, $50 $50 an hour compared to 158. And they don't, I grant, and I completely agree, they don't place enough value on the intangibles that come and the benefits that come with working for the government. So I do think it is a misnomer. People do tend to get seduced by that $158 an hour. To Larry's point, one of the, and he's right, I suppose most assigned counsel lawyers don't do 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. But a misdemeanor has a certain set amount of time that averages to resolve. And whether you're going to pay that through assigned counsel at the rate of $158 an hour or through a public defender at a much lower rate is the comparable. There's a District Attorney Carson was telling me he became familiar with a misdemeanor that went to trial, very difficult case. But I think the voucher thus far is like $20,000 for a misdemeanor. So there's a lot of room. Another problem with the assigned counsel system paradigm is there's a lot of room for abuse, litigious people or lawyers that want to be litigious and can't resolve the thing or don't resolve the thing. That just costs, astronomical amounts of money to the taxpayer. And then another and final thing is this discovery, the new discovery rules, where we get literally for something as simple as a Class E felony or a misdemeanor, you'll get tons of electronic discovery. And the district attorney's office has got grants to help with the discovery. The public defender, not so much. That's part of this grant funding because it takes a lawyer so much time to sift through that discovery to see what evidence the people have, what they may use at a trial against the accused. So that's created a problem. And I know that I don't know the vouchers. I wish the assigned counsel was here, but I suspect a large part of their vouchers is devoted towards having to review discovery. And lastly, incredibly, the state mandates that assigned counsel get paid $158 an hour, not only for the legal work that they perform, but from the time it takes them to travel to the court and back. It's block to block. They're paying $158 an hour for it. So it has been incredibly burdensome to us, whether it's been meritorious and whether or not these people have misweighed or not given enough weight to the difficulties of private practice or to the actual limited amount of opportunity there is in the assigned counsel pool. Bottom line is it's been a very seductive detraction from our need of stability and retention. And I think that's one of the problems we're suffering.
All right, this has been a very informative discussion. I'd like to move it along so we get back on track and on time. So
Want it to include amending the table of organization to increase those salaries, or?
did we hear the committee hear the question?
No, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, if you're gonna increase salaries, you gotta amend your motions to increase the table.
So-
salaries.
And whether or not there's gonna be a provision in there that no future county dollars will be paid toward the salary or fringes of this increase, which I don't know how anyone is going to monitor ever, but that was part of the discussion.
Did we capture those amendments?
This, Strader and Gilligan made the motion, so do they want to amend the
Right.
motions?
Sure.
Second.
George.
Further questions?
Should we not receive the grant in the future or that the approval of this does not have any carry forward in the future years? Is that what I'm hearing what the motion is?
Supervisor,
But
Manning,
would that-
clarification.
Would that be that it could still happen? It's just that it's not going to be automatic? Is that what that wording is, or does it just stop it and along with?
That's what makes for the department and the board of supervisors to figure, and the budget officer to figure out in future years if the funding were to go away, and if that's 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years in the future, who's gonna be around to remember? That somebody remembers that exists.
And I'd like to support the motion. I'd like to support the grant. I just want to clear for the record that I don't think that I don't think this is going to be something that's going to be, we're going to be able to adjust going forward because of all the issues that we're confronted with in recruitment and state reimbursement.
Clarification, Tammy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I don't want to hold this up anymore, but typically with these grants, I mean, Greg kind of hit on this briefly when he was talking. It may not be an adjustment to a salary, it may be elimination of positions. If we simply say, you know, it's grant contingent, we have that all over the place. So it may not be, you know, with the funds that the state is going to provide, we may not be able to have 13 public defenders. We may only be able to have 10. It will, you know, there's a lot of unknowns going forward.
So who can clarify the language so we all on the same page and we know what we're voting? Anybody want to offer?
I would say, the amendment to increase the salaries for these positions are contingent upon state aid.
Supervisor Strainer Gilligan, you made the motion, second.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, Supervisor Gilligan, agree?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Greg, thank you for very detailed discussion. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ray.
Aaron. All right. We move to the emergency services. There's only one item, a couple discussions item. Our director is with us this morning, so the request is to reappoint members to Warren County EMS Advisory Board for the term January 1, 25 through December 31st, 26. And you've got an attachment with those names. Anything else you want to discuss on that, Anne Marie?
Nope, I don't think so. I think it should be all set if everyone's in agreement.
Motion by Supervisor Conover, second Supervisor Strainer. Any question or discussion?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
We have voting and non-voting members. What are their voting?
They could be voting on maybe a policy change to mutual aid plan.
Okay.
Yep.
So what would the non-voting member be doing?
So the non-voting members just basically are there maybe to kind of chime in on the conversation if there is anything that needs to be brought up that they might not, you know, have a thought on. But the non-voting members also do have to fill out the oath as well.
An impressive list.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carry. Got two discussion items. One is a emergency management basic academy.
Yes, so we are hosting the basic academy here. We have reserved the classroom at the sheriff's department for it. And generally, this is a 5-course program. The first one is going to be second week in March. It's called the Foundations of Emergency Management. And the other courses are Science of Disaster, Planning Emergency Operations, Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program, and Public Information Basics. The first course is full. A couple of them also have waiting lists, so it's something that's been needed in this area. And we have actually a lot of folks coming from other areas to take these courses. So it's kind of a nice thing for us to be able to offer for this.
And you've got another item in reference to a conference that took place February 11th to 23rd.
Yeah, so in February, NYSEMA, which is a New York State Emergency Management Association, they do that annually. And this year was the second year that it was sold out. There were 255 attendees at the conference. And part of the conference, we do our tier 2 refresher. So I know Kevin just did the tier 1 refresher, and those are required for DISH's grants. So we have to do those every year, and we took that out there. There's also updates to threat assessment management teams, the TAM programs that the state has. They updated us on the current threat environment. They had people there to go over some disasters that happened throughout the state. So we heard from emergency management and other first responders regarding the Rome tornadoes. We also heard from a colonel that was involved in a shooting at an army base in San Antonio. He was actually a survivor of that. And it was nice to hear from these individuals because we learned from them lessons that they've learned, and they're able to help us mitigate some of our own issues as things happen.
Any questions for Emery on either one of those items? Emery, anything else for us?
Nope. Yeah, actually, one more thing I forgot to put on there. On Saturday, March 15th, we have another Citizens Preparedness Training Program. It's 11 to 1 on Saturday, March 15th. So those are
There's still
usually.
spaces available for that. I was gonna ask.
So
but-
far, there is still space available.
Okay,
But we will take walk-ins on occasion, so if anyone is not able to register, I would still encourage them to come.
All right, Emery, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Sheriff? We've got several items, but we'll be able to combine some of them. The first is the amend the Hadley Luzerne Central School District School Resource Officer Agreement. Any issues there?
This is a request on the school part. There will be no expense for the county. They just would like to pay their school resource officers more. So it's going from 90 annually for the school year to 100,000.
Motion move that Supervisor Conover, second Supervisor Strainer. Any questions?
Yeah, there's a contract here on this too. Larry, have you gone over that too?
Will do well,
Okay.
but it's a standard contract that my office has previously approved. So there may be some small adjustments to it, but.
It was lengthy.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Second item is to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Lake George Park Commission for routine service, emergency repairs, and replacement parts for Sheriff's Office patrol vessels. The agreement also for the purchase and a replacement of vessel fuel through the responsible preferred vendor and specifications of the Lake George Commission. Sheriff?
I included 2 resolutions as support for this because we had an amendment mid-year last year, but this will be our second year with the Park Commission with this service. They did not increase their rates for us. They will provide service for all of our vessels. And the reason that there's 2 agreements is initially we were hoping to purchase fuel through the state. We couldn't actually do the purchases at Green Island. So we were just we purchased fuel and we were reimbursed fuel. So this allows us, depending on where the Park Commission is with their fuel services for this summer season, it allows us either option, but it is the best option for us as far as cost goes.
Motion to move this request forward. Supervisor Strainer, Supervisor Mayday. Any questions, discussion?
One request, if I may. This is an annual contract that comes back every year. And I would ask the sheriff if he'd be opposed and if the committee would consider amending the resolution so that there could be 2 additional one-year terms to this agreement on the same, if it's the same terms and upon mutual agreement of the parties. This would allow the sheriff to not come back every single year on this one contract if there's no changes.
Supervisor
Here,
Strainer?
I'll amend it because we've.
Okay,
done this
Supervisor
before.
Mayday, you agree? Any other questions? Supervisor Driscoll?
thank you, Chairman. Sheriff, do we have any intermunicipal agreements with Essex County for patrol of the waters or?
Essex County, yes, we do. And that is for Schroon Lake.
Okay,
Well, we have in the past, we don't have anything set for this year, no, but that's something that will likely in communications be presented again at a future committee meeting. That's another annual contract, but that one's tough. We could do it year by year, but sometimes the terms change, the interests change.
okay.
Any other questions? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, I think we can combine 3, 4, 5, and 6. 3 and 5 are submissions for a grant to New York State Division of Homeland Security. And then 4 and 6 is to increase revenue. So without objections, Sheriff, I think we can discuss those 4 together.
Yes, these are annual recurring grants through Homeland Security. They're communications grant, SIC, PSAP. They allow us to make upgrades to our communication center. Our Vesta phone systems, the emergency telephone systems that are in COM have reached end of life. We're good through the end of this year. Motorola is going to carry service in through 2026 with the understanding that we're going to use all of this funding as well as some that we're carrying over from prior years to do a mutual project with Washington County Office of Emergency Services. So we will be replacing and upgrading our phone systems with this.
Motion to move those 4 items. Supervisor Mayday, Supervisor Strainer, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, items 7 through 10 are all amendments to the county budget and transfers from various years, 24 and 25. 8 is transfer from 2024. And I think they're all, we can deal with them all at once. So one is a law enforcement tech grant, one is Edward Byrne Memorial Grant, second is Edward Byrne Memorial, and the last is Division of Homeland Security. So Sheriff, any issues you want to discuss on those four?
These are all grants that help out our sheriff's office immensely, and they've all been discussed in prior meetings. The big one, the first grant, is something we're going to use to replace our records management system for police. It's a really expensive undertaking. We would definitely not be able to do it without this grant. That system's reached end of life, so we're just asking to move all remaining funds from 2024 into 25 so we can utilize them.
Motion to move these four items. Supervisor Mayday, Supervisor Conover. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 11 is a request to enter an agreement with Lexipol for an annual subscription allowing 24/7 access to Police One Academy and Corrections One Academy training programs and courses. Sheriff?
We've been working with this vendor for a number of years, and as many departments, I'm sure when they come in, they explain the struggles that they have with training. It's difficult, especially for us during the summer season, to have officers go and personally attend. These two allow us to do, they have an extensive library of virtual trainings. Virtual, we have found to be very beneficial. They meet the needs of legal requirements. They meet the needs of accreditation. I've done some of the trainings myself. I find value in them. I ask our leadership what they think. And for the $11,000 annually for our 200 employees, it's a very minimal expense.
Motion to move this request forward. Supervisor Driscoll, second. Supervisor Strainer. Questions for the sheriff? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Last item is to standardize the sheriff's office correctional facilities integrator security systems, control systems, and safety monitoring systems, and the service and maintenance of such systems by naming Securitas Technology Corporation as the exclusive vendor for such services. Sheriff?
Yes, we've had a relationship with Stanley Convergent, Stanley Integrator since our facility opened in 2004. Everything that controls the facility, our cameras, monitors, locks, it's all wrapped around their product. For us to try to go to something new would be cost prohibitive. Really, the need for this, there's a resolution that's attached that dates back to 2006. They were determined to be, sole source is not the word, but vendor of choice because of the investment that we've made from 2006 till date. We need to make this request now because Securitas took over, they acquired the business. We can no longer pay the bills because it's not Stanley, now it's Securitas.
Motion to move this item forward. Supervisor Strainer, second. Supervisor Mayday. Question for the sheriff?
Speaking way too much today, I apologize. The annual amount of 5,000 is within a department head's authority to approve, so this can go to the board if the committee wants it to, and the sheriff does, but it is within the sheriff's authority to enter into this contract and for the chairman to sign it without board authority or board approval.
All right, with that information, would any committee member like to remove this from one of the future resolutions? Leave it on.
I think, absolutely.
Remove it?
I mean, if they have jurisdiction, let's just recognize your
So
jurisdiction.
my office will reach out and
Okay.
we'll get this moving right away.
Otherwise, it's just duplicated.
Okay. All right, to make that happen, we need to withdraw the motion that was by Supervisor Strainer
Sure.
and the agreement Supervisor Mayday. All in favor of withdrawing that?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carry.
And if I could
Our-
just
our script-
also add, it's a great reason why we increased the authority for department heads very recently. So there'll be a number of these that'll come up over the next few years where there were resolutions and the departments won't need to be really quick. Because the amount is under 10,000.
Thank you. Chairman Garrity, did you have?
No, I just, I completed the tier 1 training yesterday, so they got 5 more grants going forward. It was pretty good. They dove into other areas, cybersecurity. They also did some, we talked to us about the terrorist activities and that the state has expanded what they do. And I must say, and like Larry, we partly dealt with the other thing was very diverse. She kept it short for an hour last year. We didn't go into anything that the county is doing, but it's important
that, you know, we do this training every year so they can apply for all these grants. I gave them high marks this year, so.
Good to hear.
So sorry.
Anything else for the sheriff?
I just had one question for the sheriff. I hope this is appropriate for this forum. I walked into a establishment a few weeks back, and this is as it pertains to marijuana smoking. And maybe it's by the rules of each establishment or entity, but how does that work with marijuana smoking openly right outside the establishment when you're walking in with your family? I mean, what is the policy of Warren County Sheriff's Office?
Best policy I can give is it's legal. So I would view it as cigarette smoking. If a business permits cigarette smoking, then the use of cannabis would be permissible. Even if it were a violation, if there were a customer that were smoking cannabis in a location that was prohibited for tobacco, it's not a criminal act. Everybody calls the police because anytime there's a violation, who else are you going to call? We just respond, we resolve it diplomatically. Hopefully the two parties can amicably agree to the adults, but we deal with that on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else for the sheriff? Sheriff, thank you for being with us.
I realize we're cutting short. I didn't have a discussion item, but really quickly, I know there's a lot going on in our state with corrections. I just wanted to share with the board publicly. I met with our Teamsters, the union for correction, the steward and one of the deputy stewards yesterday. Things in our facility, as far as our administration in the county goes, are solid. Our population this morning was at 96. For us, right around 96, 100. That's a healthy full. Our recruitment and retention has been solid for the first time in 5 years of my tenure. We are at full capacity as far as staffing and corrections. We're maintaining and holding that. With that, from in 2024, just January overtime, we were over $90,000 for the month. This year, in January, we're at 54. And for the month of February, the second half hasn't come in, but I'm estimating it to be around 56,000 in overtime. And last year in February, we're at 85,000. So we are doing as good as we've ever done in corrections in Warren County, despite everything else going on throughout our state.
Sheriff, a quick related question to that. With the potential of closing 5 more prisons in the state, is there any impact on a local correctional facility?
No, because for us to house somebody, we have to have a commitment from a judge. We can't just take in a population. And a lot would depend on bail reform, the status of people, the movement to have alternatives to incarceration. So we've been following along bail reform for 5 years. And for us in our sheriff's office, we had a dip the very first year. We dropped down as low as into the 40s. And within a year, we bumped back up to the 80s. And for the past 3 years, we've been averaging around 100. And like I said, that's a healthy, full population for our facility. I think our trend will stay about the same. What will happen throughout the state as far as facilities, I'm not informed, and I wouldn't want to speculate as to what the populations are and what space they have, and moving people who are incarcerated currently spread out and consolidating those persons. I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask, and I apologize.
That's fine. Have we hired correctional officers from closed state facilities?
Initially, when Great Meadow made their announcement, we hired 8. We hired 2 more within a month after that. We just hired another one this past week, and we have an application for another one that we just received yesterday. So we're still experiencing turnover. And again, when I say that, that's not a negative reflection upon this board. I'm confident it's not a negative reflection upon our sheriff's office and our leadership. It's the job. The job is a very, very challenging job. Some supervisors have heard firsthand through contract negotiations what our staff are dealing with. And some they try it and it's not for them, so they move on. Unfortunately, and I say that so sympathetically, there are a pool of very qualified correction officers throughout New York State that are available seeking employment, and that's been beneficial for Warren County.
Thank you. County Administrator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to, because we talked about the negotiation with Teamsters. We enter mediation with a mediator on the 14th of March, and hopefully we'll come to a speedy resolution that's fair for both sides.
Thank you. Sheriff, thank you. Items, privilege of the floor, committee members, other supervisors, member of the public. Seeing none, we're just about right on time. So under a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Trainer, second Supervisor Gilligan. Any question, discussion? All in